Okay, here's a test. What is this? Does it look familiar? And no, this isn't a Rorschach test. Maybe this'll help. You see, it's us, the South Coast. Only with the help of satellite technology, we can really see our watersheds. When it rains, any water that isn't absorbed into the ground runs off and converges at those veiny-looking branches, which are our creeks, and then makes its way to the ocean. But watersheds are greatly affected by urbanization, and no watershed in Santa Barbara has been more developed than the Mission Creek watershed.
Before the city was really built out, Mission Creek was called Arroyo Pedregosa, or Rocky Creek, and it was much wider and meandered along a different path than what is there today. Mission Creek of today has been not only relocated, and in some cases, but has really been narrowed so that development could expand along the creek boundaries. And that urban development has put a lot of pressure on the creek. It's really degraded the natural resources in the creek as well as the water quality.
Nothing epitomizes the manipulation of Mission Creek more than the Caltrans Channels. Built in 1934 and 1961 respectively, the channels diverted and straightened sections of the creek to accommodate the 101 freeway.
And it was for two reasons. We assume it was cheaper because they didn't have to build two bridges under the freeway. The creek from this location goes west over to the west side and the old creek channel, and then meanders back across this channel. And so that would have been two giant bridges they would have had to build. The second reason is it improved flood control.
The Caltrans Channels may have improved flood control, but it came at a cost.
The downside is that it still floods upstream and downstream. It doesn't allow water to infiltrate into the groundwater. It makes people's attitudes towards the creek a little different, I think. They consider it something that, you can throw trash in, you can graffiti, doesn't make you appreciate it. And then for water quality, when water runs over a concrete channel like this, it actually gets warmer, which is not good for water quality. That means if you have any nutrients in the water, it'll grow more algae, and it doesn't allow the ground and the plants to filter any of that water.
The concrete channels also brought an end to steelhead trout in Mission Creek. The endangered steelhead was once ubiquitous in some creeks along the South Coast, but steelhead need to spawn in the middle and upper watershed, then return to the ocean. The Caltrans Channels made that impossible.
When the water is a little higher, the water runs too fast when fish would swim up, and when it's a little lower, and they might try to go up, it's too shallow.
With complete removal of the concrete being too costly, in 2010 the Creeks Division initiated a series of projects that took an innovative approach to the challenge the channels presented to steelhead.
It was very tricky. We did a bunch of modeling, physical modeling up in Canada in a lab, and we were able to come up with a solution that hadn't really been done before anywhere, but looked like it would work.
After the successful trials, contractors cut a channel within the channel along all of the two concretized sections, as well as a bridge at Talent Road.
It's been performing just like the modeling, which is sometimes a rare thing. And so we have been happy so far. So it's still, fish can still swim up this when there's water.
There isn't always water in the Caltrans Channels, but on the other side of the 101, the section of Old Mission Creek that was cut off from its headwaters due to the construction of the freeway, water flows perennially.
There's year-round flow as long as there's not a drought. And that's really important. We have a fish species, a stickleback that lives in that creek. We have frogs.
But after being cut off, Old Mission Creek languished for years.
It was mostly filled with invasive weeds. There was poor water quality.
Those conditions, along with Old Mission Creek's highly visible location, made it a perfect candidate for restoration.
It was the first restoration project that the Creeks Division did back in 2003. And we reshaped the creek, we made a bioswale, and then we planted a bunch of native plants. We took out a bunch of non-native plants and trees and put in some new trails and areas for people to experience the creek.
But the reach of this type of restoration project is limited since the vast majority of Mission Creek is privately owned.
Over 80% of the creek beds and banks of Mission Creek are privately owned. And so in order for the Creeks Division to be successful at creek restoration throughout the city creeks, We need to partner with private property owners.
And some private property owners have answered the call, like the Creekside neighbors on Vernon Road.
There was significant interest from the neighborhood in doing some restoration work on the banks of the creek. Creeks Division worked with the neighbors and implemented a successful neighborhood restoration project. The neighbors were actually in there planting plants. They have ownership of that area. They really love and appreciate the creek, and it's really improved the riparian corridor and the natural resources of the creek.
But not everyone lives next to a creek that they can help restore. So the Creeks Division developed a number of creek-friendly demonstration projects on the Mission Creek watershed that anyone can mimic.
The Creeks Division's installed permeable pavers in areas where there is existing hardscape to demonstrate how that can improve water quality while also allowing for the continual transportation use of that surface, like pedestrian, parking, or driving. Permeable pavements allow the water to soak through and pollutants to be filtered out, and that water to recharge groundwater, feed the plants, and also slowly make its way to the creeks and keep base flows of the creeks at a healthy level throughout the dry periods between rains.
Permeable paver projects in the Mission Creek watershed include Oak Park, the Westside Community Center, and Ellis Keck Park Memorial Garden.
The big push now is to try to get the developed areas of the city to act more like a sponge during rain events.
In addition to projects aimed at treating the water after it hits the ground, the Creeks Division has also tackled preventing pollutants from getting into the watershed in the first place. It has installed hundreds of screens that block trash at storm drains so street sweepers can remove it. The Creeks Division has also worked to educate citizens about ways they can help improve creek and ocean water quality, like reducing pesticide use and picking up after their pets.
You know, every person can really make a difference. And if you could plant native plants or not use pesticides, these things make a big difference in the grand scheme of things.
Going forward, the Creeks Division will continue to strive to make a big difference in Mission Creek and all of our watersheds. But with so much of the watershed being in private hands, if we really want to see improvement in water quality, we all need to do our part. As the Creeks Division has shown, that can happen in a number of ways, from restoration to increasing permeability to pollution reduction. However, maybe the most powerful thing we can do is reacquaint ourselves with the thing we're striving to improve.
Our creeks are dry in the mid-watershed a lot, so people don't even know they're a creek half the time. And what I would like to see is people understand that better and get a better appreciation for the creek, even when it's dry. Like, oh, hey, that's a special place in the city.